What do you really need for conducting surveillance as a startup private investigator? I know everyone out there has their own opinion of what is needed, and I know that for a startup PI, the confusion that surrounds this question, what do you really need for conducting surveillance as a startup private investigator, is often enough to make them not even want to get started. Let's just be real about it, folks. As with any entry-level job, there are the bare basics, the bare minimums to getting started, and then there is the dream setup that every veteran has. Let's focus first on those bare basics, the bare minimums of what you need for surveillance as a startup private investigator. First thing is your PI license. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this subject as I have a few videos on the channel about how to obtain your PI license. The bottom line is you will need a PI license in most states to start a PI business. Just search PI license on my channel's homepage to find more information and videos on how to go about obtaining your PI license. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. Next, you need to have a vehicle. You can't do surveillance without a vehicle, folks. And your vehicle needs to be reliable and it needs to be dependable. It doesn't have to be brand new, but it needs to be in good running order, not something that you're working on every weekend. And your surveillance vehicle needs to fit in. I usually recommend what we call a soccer mom vehicle, like a crossover SUV or a van or even a four-door sedan. Now, my first surveillance vehicle was a black Pontiac Grand Prix with red racing stripes running down the side. I got really dark tinted windows on there, and that's something else your surveillance vehicle will need is tinted windows, at least to the sides and the back. But it worked really well for me, but it did kind of stand out. If you think about that black vehicle, a sports vehicle with those dark tinted windows, it did stand out a little bit. But I love that vehicle because I could lay the seats all the way flat and I could actually, even with my big old belly, lay below the windows so nobody could see me inside. I had also got, after that, a red Pontiac van. A red, yes, red Pontiac van. I love that van because there was no center console, so I could easily hop into the back seat. It didn't take me any time at all to get in the back seat. And the back seats were all individual seats. They weren't bench seats. So I took out all the seats outside of the one in the middle, and then I could just sit on it and I could spin around and get a 360-degree view. The problem with that one was that it was bright red, and again, very noticeable. So you want to make sure that your vehicle is something that is not going to stand out in the crowd. You're also going to want, like I said, window tinting, but you should get a sunscreen to put up in your windshield. And I highly recommend a black curtain and blackouts. And if you go to my website, howtobeapi.com, and if you go to the PI gear section in there, I have some cloth that I recommend for using for a black curtain that I put behind me. And then I have a clothes rod that hangs on. And then I use black foam core that I cut out in the shape of the windows for my blackouts. Now, besides the vehicle, you're also going to need insurance, especially if you're licensed, and most PI licenses do require some level of insurance and many times a bond too. So you're going to need insurance for your business. Another thing you must have to do surveillance is a camera. You got to have a camera to do surveillance. Otherwise, it's just your observations. You're not gathering any video evidence out there. You need a good quality video camera. It needs to have, I usually recommend 40x optical zoom. Now, I know looking at a lot of the handheld camcorders out there today, most are 30x optical zoom, but you can find some still that have 40x optical zoom. Don't look at the digital zoom. It doesn't matter. Don't even use the digital zoom. And you don't want to use that digital zoom because it is digital. So what it is it's looking at everything and then making a digital version of it. So that can easily be challenged in court. And oftentimes digital zoom is very blurry, very pixelated. So you only want to use optical zoom. And you need that good optical zoom so when you're shooting that video, you're able to zoom in and get a good face shot of your subject. Also, if you're out in the country or you're down the street a few blocks, you're able to zoom in and watch things from a distance. I also recommend 1080p. I think that is fine. I don't think you need to go for 4K video. And the reason being is 4K video formatting makes the file very large in size, and it's difficult when you go to edit it. You're going to have a beefier computer, and it's difficult when you send it to your client because it's going to be a very large file, so it's going to take up a lot of cloud storage to be able to put it up there and take them a lot more time to download it as well. Most people aren't watching this video on a 4K monitor. They're going to be watching it on a regular 1080p monitor. I also will say this too, 720p is okay if that's all you have. To get started with, 720p is okay, but I generally recommend 1080p for your video. Now note, there is a difference between P and I, 1080p and 1080i. 1080p video is where it's parallel, so you have all these screens, you know how it runs all the pixels across the screen, and it's going to run line 1, then line 2, then line 3, then line 4, and then line 5, all the way up. It's very, very, very fast, but it makes it very fluid. If it's interlaced, the way that works is it does all of the odd numbers first. So it's going to do line 1, then line 3, then line 5, then line 7, all the way up to the top. And then it's going to come back and do the even numbers on there, and that a lot of times will create some pixelation in there, and it's not very good quality. So make sure it's 1080p, not 1080i. A lot of times you'll find those 1080i cameras a whole lot cheaper, and that's the reason, but you don't want that for surveillance video. I also highly recommend for your camera to get it in a dark color, black or dark blue, something like that. You don't want hot pink, you don't want bright green, you don't want silver. In fact, I have a black one, but I've put black electrical tape around the rim of it because it's silver and I don't want it to stand out. And I also recommend a small handheld camcorder. Those are the best. They're discreet. You can fold the screen up and you can put it in your pocket. You can take it as your covert camera if you need to as well. And speaking of covert cameras, here's a big secret that most people aren't going to tell you. You don't have to run out and spend hundreds of dollars on a covert camera as a startup surveillance investigator. Usually you can use your regular camera, stick it in your pocket, and you can pull it out and just keep it low in a lot of places, or you can use your cell phone. Now there's a lot of reasons to not use your cell phone, and I have some videos on the channel about that too, but I know for startup surveillance investigators, sometimes that is the best way to go, just to use your cell phone for your covert camera. You want to make sure your main camera has plenty of memory on it too. 64 gig is the minimum probably. 128 gig is really nice too. If you get one that takes SD cards, make sure you have multiple SD cards. You never know. If you're out there doing surveillance and you have to get 4 or 5 hours of video, you are going to fill up the memory on that camera really, really quick. So you want to have more cards to be able to slide in there and continue doing the job. You also need a notebook with a good pen, or you could use a Big Chief tablet and a number 2 pencil. You don't need fancy software to get started. It's really nice. There's a lot of software packages out there that you can use for investigation companies, but you don't need that when you start up. Now, I have a case management journal. Again, if you go to my website, howtobeapi.com, and you go to the books section, there is a case management journal that I still use this format today. I don't use any fancy software out there. With this, I can keep track of each case. I can keep track of all my clients. I can keep track of all my calendar events. I can keep track of so many things, and I can just carry it around. And it's black, it's discreet. It can lay on the seat in the car. Nobody's going to notice it. It's not like it's folded open for people to read. It doesn't say investigator case management or anything like that. So I can keep all the things in there for a case. The time I got there, the times I left, the dates, the observations, the details about the surveillance, everything in all my cases is right there. And it's not just for surveillance. You can use it for other cases too. Now, another thing that you probably want to have is some disguises or extra clothing. Things like sunglasses, ball caps. You don't want to get too elaborate. You don't want to stand out in the crowd, but you want to be able to change up your appearance. If you're following the person for a very long time, sometimes it's not a bad idea to back off a bit and then put on a ball cap or take off a ball cap, put on your glasses or take off your glasses, put on sunglasses, things like that, especially if you are going on foot surveillance. I always, when I go on foot surveillance, try to grab something to make me look a little different than when I was behind the individual. And having other shirts, button-up shirts and pullover shirts and things like that, so you can completely change things, is really nice to have. And while we're talking about clothing, when you go out on surveillance, make sure whatever you're wearing is discreet clothing, nothing that stands out. Neutral tones, grays, browns, navy blues, blacks, and wear layers to help you with temperature and with weather changes. Having lots of layers on, you can take layers off, but if you don't have other layers to put on, you can't put them back on. So I always dress in layers and then I take it off as the day gets warmer. And make sure you have walking shoes, tennis shoes. Don't go out there in your flip-flops. I know a guy that used to go out all the time and wear his flip-flops on surveillance. And after a couple of times of, some rather embarrassing injuries to himself while he's, chasing somebody down a mall or in a parking lot or something because he didn't have regular shoes on, he learned this lesson the hard way. And then there's food and water. I always suggest dry foods because they're a little better on the system. Non-perishable foods, things like energy bars, nuts, dried fruits, stuff like that. Something that is not going to spoil. It's going to be in your car for a while. You don't want to get in your car at 5 o'clock in the morning and then end up following your subject for 12 hours and dinner time's rolling around and you don't have time or the ability to stop somewhere and you go to grab that banana out of a cooler and it's no good or something. So I say non-perishable things, energy bars, like I said, nuts, granola bars, things like that are really good. And then waters or Gatorades or other sports drinks, not sodas, not coffee. You don't want things with caffeine. Caffeine makes things go through your system quicker. It also does affect your body and your mind. And if you're sitting out there in a hot car for a very long time, the most refreshing thing is going to be water or a sports drink. And a small backpack to carry your equipment. You can put all your equipment into a small backpack and then put it in your car. And then when you get on scene or shortly before you get on scene, start taking your equipment out. But this works well for if you have to go on surveillance on foot in, let's say a park or a recreation area or the mountains or something like that. You can put stuff back in there. You can put your camera in there. You can put whatever you're going to need in there, your snacks and stuff like that. And then you can follow your subject on foot and you just kind of fit in. I also highly recommend a power inverter or converter, something that will convert DC to AC. Not one that you're going to plug into your car. Not one you're going to plug into your car. This is one that you're going to charge up separately, and then you can plug in your camera to keep it charged, your laptop if you're taking a laptop with you. That you don't always need a laptop on surveillance. I know, I know a lot of people take laptops out there and then they try to work on reports and work on this and work on that, but then they're not keeping their eyes on the prize and they can often miss some very key things. And the worst part about missing key things, you missed it and you don't know that you missed it. Cash is king while you're out there on surveillance. You want cash in small bills, fives, tens, ones, coins, things like that. You need cash for things like tolls, park entry fees. If you go into a fast food place, you follow them into a fast food place or a restaurant, it's a lot easier to get up and leave and throw some cash on the table to pay your bill or something like that, or pay in advance if you're at a fast food place with cash, then you're not getting delayed. So always keep cash on you. Now, before I go over some quick tips for conducting surveillance, let's discuss the most important piece of equipment you will need. This is portable bathroom facilities. Let's be real, folks. You can't leave your surveillance position to go to the bathroom. You can't just get up and leave whenever you want. I can almost guarantee you when you do that, your subject will leave during that 5-minute window that you're gone. Now, what do you use? Guys, empty Gatorade bottles, something like that, might work well in a pinch. But you can go online and you can get portable toilets and urinals and keep one of those, and make sure that you are responsible with it and that you are discreet when you use it. Again, I know a guy who one time wasn't so discreet, and this was actually a 3-man operation that we were on. And the cops rolled up on this guy. What happened was he had to go, and he had to go really, really bad. And he couldn't leave. He was the eyes on the target. And well, he grabbed one of his little sports bottles and he proceeded to take care of business there. But one of the neighbors had seen what he was doing, and seeing all that jostling and what he was doing, they thought it was pretty strange. So when the police rolled up, because they called the cops and they said this guy's doing weird stuff out here in the car, they didn't roll up nice. They rolled up with lights flashing and everything, pulled him out of the car because they thought they had somebody doing something he shouldn't have been doing. And he probably shouldn't have been doing it. He didn't have all of his shades up. He didn't have a lot of things. And he wasn't being very discreet. He learned a lot from that. So you need to learn a lot from that lesson too. The first big tip to ensure your surveillance is successful is to always research your target and your target location before you go out to do the surveillance. You need to understand the layout. You need to know where the ingresses and the egress points are. You need to know what the traffic patterns are, potential stationary spots before you get there. And it really helps to know your subject's habits. Get photographs, things like that. You can learn the basics of OSINT, open source intelligence, from some other videos I have right here on this channel too. So after this video, go to my regular channel page and you can search for OSINT, O-S-I-N-T, OSINT, open source intelligence, and learn how you can gather a lot of that intel about your subject and about the subject location. When you're out there on surveillance, be aware of your surroundings at all times. This includes people that are around you, the neighbors. Are there kids going to school? Kids will bust you quicker than anything, especially younger ones. Younger kids see you much quicker than anybody else. A lot of other people are walking around with their cell phones or whatever, but the little kids, they will notice you. So be aware of your surroundings. And make sure you're aware of changing weather conditions. Is a storm coming in? I had one that I did a video about where I was sitting there and I was looking to the north at the house. It was out in the country, and I saw this huge winter storm coming right towards me, and I kept getting worried because I had to go that direction to go home too. So as it kept getting closer and closer, and as it started snowing, I started getting more and more worried. Luckily, I was able to end that case in time to get home, but it took me a lot longer to get home than it normally would. But you need to be aware of anything, any hazards, any problems like that. Stay alert and stay focused while you're on surveillance, okay? That staying focused is very, very important. That's why you don't want a laptop. You don't want to pull your phone up and be reading a book or watching a video. I will often listen to podcasts with an earpiece. You want to use an earpiece for that because you don't want people to walk by and hear your podcast inside your vehicle. Obviously, they're going to know somebody's sitting inside there. But that allows you to stay focused. Keep your eye on the prize, because many times on surveillance, it's only a couple of seconds. your subject comes out and grabs a newspaper, or runs the trash out to the trash can, or goes out and checks the mail, or grabs something in their car. But those couple of seconds of video prove a lot to the client, and that is very important. Now, when you go mobile, maintain a safe distance between you and your subject, but not too far behind. This is half art and half science. It's going to take some practice, but you want to keep a safe distance. You want to watch ahead for traffic lights. You want to watch ahead for construction, for shopping centers, for any points of interest and other destination points. You can use other vehicles too to get between you and your subject to kind of hide you, but you want to be careful. You don't want them to go through a green light and the car in front of you stops, so you have to stop. So you really have to be paying close attention to everything. When you're on foot surveillance, change your appearance if possible. I kind of covered that with the things that you need, having those disguises. If I've been following them for a while and I didn't have a hat on, well, I'll throw a ball cap on. A lot of times I'll have a ball cap on, so I'll take that ball cap off. If I had my sunglasses on, then I want to take my sunglasses off and put on regular glasses. Or I can walk around without my glasses. Now, if you're not able to do that safely, then don't do that. You know, if you need glasses, you need glasses. But change up your appearance. And oftentimes, what I'll do too, I'll usually on surveillance, I'll be in a t-shirt. And then I might be able to grab a button-up shirt and throw over that t-shirt and button it up really quick, so I look completely different. And while you're following them around on foot surveillance, wherever they're going, follow at a distance. And be careful to not cross paths too many times. The more times they see your face, the more times they're going to remember you. And you don't want them to remember you when you're in the car following them again. So be careful about crossing paths with them. Get the video that you can when you're on foot surveillance, but be careful. Don't take chances. You know, you don't want to take chances and have them see you again too many times, or see you peeking around the corner as you're shooting video or something like that. So get what you can, but don't take too many chances, and get back to your vehicle before they do. Usually, especially if you're at a grocery store or something like that, you can start to tell by the way people are acting. They're walking up back to the front of the store. They're going to go to the checkout stand or something like that. Might be a good time to head back to your vehicle so you can get set up. You can get the video as they come back to their vehicle, and you're ready to follow them when they leave. Regardless of whether you're on foot surveillance, mobile surveillance, or stationary surveillance, the most important thing that you need to keep in mind is situational awareness. Make sure you are aware of everything that's going on around you.